What strikes everybody walking past this chapel, and we are just to the side of the Ground Zero site, but it's a busy road, but what really makes people stop, people take photographs, are the gates of this chapel, which is covered in thousands of white ribbons which bear the words "Remember to Love" and have little notes of inscriptions from people for those who were killed in the 9/11 incident. But this is a very different image to what happened 10 years ago when there were the posters of those who were missing all over these gates. I'm with one of the volunteers at this chapel, Chester Johnson. Chester, this is a hugely different image now. Do you remember what this place was like in the aftermath of 9/11?
Oh my God, of course yes I do. This effectively became the kiosk, if you will. Initially, there were pictures of those who were missing. Poems began to appear, pieces of clothing appeared, and messages of love and remembrance. So this is really meant to be a way in which it represents the love and caring and deep hurt that was expressed here at the chapel.
On the day itself, Chester, and the question almost everybody you ask has an answer to, what were you doing?
Well, my wife Frida and I were in our offices, which were only a couple of hundred yards from the points of contact here at Ground Zero. We were actually on the phone when the first hit, and we stayed in our offices. And then when the towers came down, the plume came in our direction. And we actually thought that was our last day. And then it overwhelmed the building. The concrete and the debris and the jet fuel and all the rest overwhelmed the building. And everything went dark, and we were trapped for several hours. My wife, Frida, saw a little speck of sunlight come through, and we began the process of working our way out of the building, made our way home. And people respond to the events like that in different ways. And I'm a poet, and so therefore I'm pretty verbal. I kept talking about it, and I couldn't get it out of my system. My wife said, "You are driving me crazy. You've got to go do something." So I began to volunteer here.
Will you tell me about the importance that this church played to so many people coming here, and what they wanted to get from the church?
It was hell for the recovery workers who were only a few yards from here, right across the street here. And there were only 2 or 3 whole bodies that were found. And they had to go through the debris and see pieces of bodies and to find a place of relief. And they would come, and there would be food, and there would be music, and there would be someone to talk to. But it was love and caring that mattered. A few years ago, they decided to have volunteers and recovery workers read names at one of the commemorations. But so many recovery workers, after they would finish the names, would say, "Thank God for St. Paul's Chapel." I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. What I failed to recognize was that it was the swell of humanity throughout the world that would not allow St. Paul's Chapel to be other than this place of love and caring from then on.
And you've spoken about how you've turned to poetry. Tell me a little bit about that, how your thoughts have turned to poetry and what sort of things you've decided to write about.
I've been a poet for over 40 years, and I actually worked with W.H. Auden when I was a young whippersnapper. And we're actually today, this afternoon, Poets House has chosen 7 poets to read at Trinity Wall Street, to read works that relate to 9/11 or either directly or indirectly. I'm reading the signature poem and another sort of poem on loss.
And you mentioned this signature poem
Yes.
dealing with the aftermath of 9/11.
Yes.
Can you read that for us?
I certainly will. St. Paul's Chapel. It stood, not a window broken, not a stone dislodged. It stood when nothing else did. It stood when terrorists brought September down. It stood among myths. It stood among ruins. To stand was its purpose. Long lines prove that. It stands, and around it now a shrine of letters, poems, acrostics, litter of the heart. It is the standing people want to grieve, serve, and tend, celebrate the lasting stone of St. Paul's Chapel. And deep into its thick breath, the largest banner fittingly from Oklahoma climbs heavenward with hands as stars, hands as stripes, hands as a flag. And a rescuer reaches for a stuffed toy to collect a touch. And George Washington's pew doesn't go unused. Charity fills a hole or two. It stood in place of other sorts. It stood when nothing else could. The great had fallen as the brute hardware came down. It stood.